Well, this is what I want to do. Well, I'm going to dive in straight away, Nick. How much you know about estate agency businesses, I'm not 100% sure, but Rob and I will have some experience in this particular industry, and it's been crushed by the economic kind of situation where I think most sales businesses, is it fair to say, Rob, are feeling the pressure of whether they are an actual business and whether there is actually any hope for exiting for millions. What would you say, Rob, in terms of that as an overriding kind of statement? Is that something that rings true, or is there more potential out there for sales businesses and business owners in estate agency?
So probably the obvious answer, Matt, is unfortunately not. The sales business and the goodwill that sits behind it isn't truly worth a great deal. I mean, I've bought probably 4 businesses in my time, and the first thing you do is change the name. So all that goodwill disappears with the owner and his millions of pounds. Well, not millions of pounds, as the case may be.
So on that statement, that great opening, I mean, obviously from our perspective, there's going to be a lot of people that are running these smaller businesses, and they're seeing a lot of pressure from the self-employed market. There are obviously lettings opportunities and property management opportunities out there. Coming to you, Nick, if you were starting in this industry or you were entering into this industry, what kind of things would you be thinking about first?
Yeah, and just for context, I have worked in the estate agency industry in the past and worked with businesses that have that goal. They tend to be a little bit more established, and they tend to be looking to scale through consolidation and acquisition to create groups and things like that. So they tend to be, I mean, those entities globally across any industry can exit for millions for obvious reasons, because there's scale, there's infrastructure, there's obviously profitability, those sort of things. I think, what's interesting, right? When I look at all sorts of industries that I work across, starting in any industry with the goal of kind of exiting for millions is pretty audacious, right? I mean, it's great. Everyone, I talk about it all the time, but I also am very realistic of the fact that it's not a pathway or a journey that should be for everybody, right? Because like, you can create, and Daniel Priestley talks about this all the time. You can create a fantastic lifestyle business, make, decent money, certainly high 6, possibly 7 figures of income. And that's going to achieve all of your objectives in life, potentially, right? Then you have the crazy people that I work with who want to sell their companies for often 8 to 9 figures. Yeah. But I won't even entertain a conversation with those people until their business has the right foundations in place. And normally that means they're past the startup phase and they're into kind of a more scale stage. We can define all that on this chat. But my advice to people is, listen, at the end of the day, a business, as far as I look at it, in terms of a valuable business, has 2 main things, right? It has the ability to generate profit, which converts to cash, and it has the ability to have a business model that is scalable, meaning that it's not reliant on the individual. You can build, processes and structure around it. And quite frankly, if I was starting a business from scratch, I would be identifying the pathway to those 2 things, because that's going to give me the best opportunity to create high value and the potential for, $1 million, tens of $1 million exit in the future.
That's really interesting. That's a really fresh perspective as well. And I think a lot of businesses just fall into what they're doing, or a lot of business owners fall in estate agency, that is, where they maybe were really good estate agents, and the next thing you know, they've kind of gone, sod working for someone else, I'm just going to do it myself. And they never really think about the exit, if you like, what's the end in mind going to be for this business? So in other words, setting the sat nav coordinates further down the line, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it looks like, and working their way back. And what sort of steps, sorry, just to kind of pick into, you said you wanted to share a little bit around that, but could we just dive into a little bit about how that could look for?
Yeah. I mean, I'll take you through some of the stuff that I have had written about in the book as well, because it's a methodology that I created from my decade or so in private equity, which is around scaling to a sale. It's called Scale to Sale. And the first pillar of that is clear endgame, which is exactly what you were saying, Matt, which is reverse engineering from a goal. So any kind of significant, sophisticated investor, certainly the ones that I've worked in private equity, when they buy a company, the first thing they do is talk about the exit.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting distinction, because an entrepreneur typically won't even think about that until maybe they have to think about it, right? Because everyone has to exit their business at some point. But the investors don't think. They think about, how can I double or triple this business in the quickest time possible by doing certain things, so that I can create, a significant liquidity or capital event. Okay. Now, what I do advise everybody is you should reverse engineer from an outcome, right? Even if that's going to your first $1 million dollars or pounds of revenue or whatever, you could have, reverse engineering and then mapping out the plan is a proven way of actually getting to a result with more precision than not. In terms of creating a significant exit, it's a much more expansive way of thinking, because most businesses, certainly small businesses, and we can get into what the numbers look like, they don't ever sell successfully, right? A lot of them are closed down. A lot of them are kind of just literally people give up on them because they're not creating enough freedom or kind of income and those sort of things. So the lanes that I sort of play in are the ones where you have to get to a certain level of scale. When you get to that certain level of scale, it opens up the capital markets, which effectively is the buyer marketplace for acquisitions. And then all of a sudden, your chances of selling your business go from something like, 2 out of 10 to like 8 out of 10.
Right.
Simply because it's a supply and demand thing, right? Your business is now scalable and valuable, and people want to buy it. But you've got to understand the steps to get there, which is critical.
I think it's interesting, Rob, you'll probably know this as well when you go and work with clients in a estate agency and getting into the nitty gritty, that most estate agents focus on the immediate goal and the short-termism of being an estate agent. Even if I was coming to see you, Nick, the estate agent, or Rob, they will be thinking, how can I get your house on the market, rather than how can I understand the client's exit? How can I understand the client's outcome first? And then drawing it all the way back through the plan with precision, as you've alluded to. Would that be fair to say, Rob?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that the end in mind, a Stephen Covey line, isn't it, as well, from his 7 Habits. And I think that's really important. I think sometimes, I remember I started from my kitchen table, and the business ended up, 30 staff, couple of locations. It changes over time. I get that. But how having the end in mind really helps me was it helped with directionally with every decision I made. So the decisions I made 6 months in and a year in were pointing me in the right direction for 10 years later. And I think that whole idea of being really clear on where you're going. And it was interesting, Nick, saying about making your business saleable so it's attractive. I actually engineered my sale because I did a management buyout. My managers and my old business partner bought me out. So that again, that's another great strategy. So
it is a good strategy,
that end
exactly.
in mind all helps to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And just to add on that, I mean, I tend to focus on third-party sales predominantly, like businesses that sell to either another company or to a private equity firm. But Rob's point is great. I mean, there are other options. I think there's 8 different exit options, actually. And, one of them is like the MBO, MBI route, but you can also sell to your employees in other ways as well, ESOPs. There's all sorts of different things. So I think the one thing I would like to impress on anyone here who has a real estate business is that you do have to think about some form of exit strategy, right? Whatever that is. Otherwise, I hate it when I meet people where they haven't thought that through. And as I said, something happens, usually something quite challenging happens. And then they're forced into a direction that they probably wouldn't have done had they had sort of even just put a little bit of thinking into this stuff from the beginning.